Good morning, KINES 5 students, and welcome to week 3 of KINES 5, Sport and Society. I've enjoyed reading the assignments that you guys have submitted so far, but I want to remind you, get those turned in. A number of you have missed both assignments so far, and I want to make sure everybody gets caught up. So what I'm going to start doing, each email that I send you guys for the week that has all the information in there that you need, I'm also going to include every assignment to date below that. So when you get an email, it will say week 3 assignments. And then as you get down through those assignments and links and what you need to do, underneath that'll be week 2 assignments, and underneath that'll be week 1 assignments. And I'll continue to do that for the rest of the semester so that if you are just staying up with the most current email, you would have every bit of information that's been sent out. You just may have to scroll down quite a ways if you miss something, but that way, and give everybody the most opportunities to get their work in and, like I said, get a good grade in this class. Again, I have appreciated the assignments that you've turned in so far as we study some of the early pioneers of sport. You know, hopefully it gives us some perspective as we start moving forward. And so as we go through this class, we're going to be looking at different decades throughout time. And the first 2 weeks was a little bit of a history and kind of just get the ball rolling and get the wheels turning in your brain in terms of kind of what this class is about and where all of this started. And once we kind of know that, then we can begin our journey through the next, well, we're going to start in the 1900s, and we're going to do a decade each week and pick an athlete from that decade and talk about them and study them, and go all the way up until we're at the present day. And so as we get through the historical stuff, again, I hope you appreciated some of the early athletics and early athletes and some of the challenges that they endured and some of the change that they were able to be a part of, for positive and sometimes negative. And sometimes as we read about some of these great people that just were leading the way for people behind them to come through, you know, they came with great sacrifice. And many of the athletes we're going to learn about, you know, despite everything they did, they were still not treated fairly and endured great struggles in their own personal lives, despite their success as an athlete. So as we get into this week's assignment and this week's lecture, we have a few links that I would like you guys to watch. They're not very long. One's 10 minutes, one's 11 minutes, one's 4 minutes. And these kind of wrap up the Greeks, and they also talk about different sports and their origins. And then the third link is just the top 10 athletes that changed history for different ways. And some of those athletes will be some of the ones we're going to study when we get to those decades. But this week, we're starting with the 1900s. So 1900 through 1910, which was referred to as the Progressive Era. President Roosevelt was the president of the United States at the time. And he was a strong advocate of athletics. He had lots of health issues growing up and was not able to be much of an athlete, but definitely supported and believed that, you know, mind, body, soul, you know, the complete person, and that physical attributes through sport were very important for things like leadership and for our country. So we had a strong support of that, and of athletics and of sport coming from all the way at the top. But at the same time, in the 1900s, there was a lot going on that you know, was impacted by sport and by great athletes. And so if we look at what was going on in the 1900s, there were still major imbalances in who was able to vote. this was when the automobile was first coming around, and so there was this transition of our country, that we were going to progress, and we were doing all these progressions with technology and different areas in the world. But despite all that, in the 1900s, 1900 to 1910, a lot of people were getting left behind of this progression, and mainly people of color and women, and the disparity in opportunities, the disparity in financial gain, influence, a seat at the table, was just amazing at that time. Amazing may not be a great word for it. It was brutal. It was almost impossible for women and people of color to feel like they were equals, because of the way society was at that time. And so there was a lot going on. And so when you look at, how sports played a role in that, we're going to look at an unbelievable person and talk about a few of the warriors from that time era today, briefly. And I really, what I want you guys to do is go in and research some of these superstars. But I'm going to start giving you a person to study each week, because I think these are influential people that overcome great obstacles, and people that are inspiring to me and to other classes that have gone through this journey. So we talked a little bit about what was going on in the 1900s. There was, there was unrest throughout the world. Wars were beginning to fester, and there was just a lot going on. And again, despite all of that, sports were still flourishing. And as sports progressed from, there's a huge gap between the Romans and 1900. I understand that, but we're going to assume, and through research and through, information that we know and can look up, sports continued to progress, and it had come a long way. Technology of sports, rules, more organized sports, and it became a worldwide event, with Olympics and world championships and golf championships. And so some of the sports that were happening in 1900 that were big at the time, baseball was huge, and probably a name that many of you have never heard of, but at the time, one of the best players was a person named Honus Wagner, no relation that I know of to my family. Basketball was rolling, boxing was going, and at that time, one of the great up and comers was a young African American boxer named Jack Johnson, and we're going to talk more about Jack Johnson next week as we get into the 1910s to the 1920s. Track and field was rolling, golf was going, tennis was going, and stars were starting to emerge out of these different sports. And as they did, we started to see women, we started to see people of color, and we started to see some different looking athletes showing up. And just to name a few, Helene de Portales of Switzerland won her first gold medal in this era. She was a part of a sailing team. Dorothy Campbell, first woman to win the American Canadian Open, the US Open, golf events, and the British Open. Willie Anderson, first to win 4 US Opens. These are golf events. And Willie Anderson was an immigrant from Scotland. He won the US Opens in 1901, 1903, 1904, and 1905. So these were unlikely sports heroes of the time. And they, like I said, they overcame great odds to get to where they were and to get on that playing field where they could finally feel like maybe it was even and they had a chance. And that's one of the things that's great about sports, is that no matter where you come from, and no matter who you are, when you get on that playing field, there's a sense of equality and a sense that you have a chance to win and be successful. and there's not a lot of places in life where that opportunity exists. And so athletes of that era and athletes continue to show up and compete and be a part of an opportunity to feel like they're equals. And so there was a lot going on at that time. And so despite great feats by athletes, as I mentioned a few minutes earlier, there was a lot going on in that time in regards to inequalities all the way across the board. And what's sad to say is when we look at the inequalities that were happening in 1900 to 1910 in our society, many of those are still going on today. And we see that in the news every night, some of the same situations of inequality and people taking advantage. And so it's unfortunate. I'm happy to say that there's been a lot of progress since 1900 until now, but we still have a long way to go. And so we just hope that sports stars and great, unbelievable people in sport will continue to pop up and keep coming up. And as the years go on, new leaders and new inspirational people will pop up. But in the 1900s, 1900 to 1910, an athlete that I would like you guys to study this week is a female athlete, and her name is Margaret Abbott. And this will all be in the notes that I'm going to email out to you guys. But Margaret Abbott, I want to know, who was she? What sport did she play? What issues in society did she impact? What sacrifices, if any, did she have to make? How did these contributions affect social and human rights? How did these contributions affect her personal life? Okay, so as you learn about Margaret Abbott, those are the questions that I want you to include in your work this week. As we talk about sacrifices, something that I'd like you guys to think about. You think about our athletes that go and represent the United States in Olympic events and world championship events, and how those athletes are sometimes put up on a pedestal, many times put up on a pedestal and revered by everybody. And then sadly, when they are no longer an athlete, they are treated very differently, and all the negativeness of inequality goes right back into a part of many of their lives, unfortunately, because people that have biases, people that believe that there's nothing wrong with our society in terms of equality for everybody. When those athletes are not athletes anymore, or they're done competing, or they lose the big game, it's interesting to me and sad that a lot of those characteristics in people in society come out, a lot of those negative characteristics. And so it's kind of like, everybody loves a winner. And as long as you're winning, everyone's going to love you. And there's an old saying with athletes that, don't let the pats on the back bring you down. Because when you're not winning, all those people on the bandwagon usually go away pretty quickly. And we're going to see examples of that with some great athletes that just did tremendous things for our country and for our world. In terms of human rights, civil rights, and equality. And so I want you to think about those, when you think about some of the current issues that are going on, and try to, if you can, put yourself in those situations and think about how certain things would affect you personally, how things would affect you in terms of your family, in terms of your personal life, in terms of your professional life, and then beyond sport. when you look at some of the things that are happening today, some of the hot spots that sports are intertwined with, it can help you gain some perspective into trying to do that. But really, I think you gain perspective by trying to put yourself in other people's shoes and try to understand maybe what they were going through, not necessarily judge what they were going through, but try to understand. And through understanding, what we're able to do is really, you know, consider another thought, consider another opinion, and they don't have to be right or wrong. And so when you truly understand somebody, you have accepted who that person is, and appreciated the fact that they may have totally different opinions and philosophies than you do. And those aren't right or wrong. Everybody's philosophy, everybody's way of life, everybody, the way they act, the human being that they are is based on their experiences and who they are and the perspective that they currently have at that time in their life. And this is something that's a lifelong challenge of trying to gain as much perspective as you can so that you can understand the people that you live with and the people that surround you, and the things that people are trying to go through. So as we try to understand what these athletes were going through, we're trying to gain perspective. Okay. And just like a lot of the people of that era, they gained perspective and weren't really even seeking it out in some cases. We're trying to gain perspective and just walk in their shoes a little bit. And again, not necessarily say, well, I would have done this or I would have done that, but understanding that everybody deals with emotional issues, with all kinds of issues that affect how you respond or reply or act. And again, those responses to all of those things are based on the life experiences of that individual, which are going to be vastly different than any life experiences of yours. Now, you may have common life experiences with other people, but nobody's going to have the exact same life experiences. Therefore, nobody's going to have the exact same perspective. And so, but we can increase our perspective. And by studying leaders and people that have done great things and inspiring people, people that have overcome great odds, and people that deal with struggle on a daily basis and a lifelong basis, that can give us perspective. So perspective is something that you don't necessarily have to live through all those to learn a little bit about someone else's perspective, but it is something that you can work on and gain more of. And in life, just about anything you do, interaction with other people is pretty important. And having a little bit of perspective about where people are coming from really can help you in relationships quite a bit. People that you work with, people that you may be in charge of as a coach or as a shift leader or a manager, that perspective helps a lot, and it really will help you understand sometimes why people respond the way they do to certain things, because it's relative, right? Pain is relative. What's painful to me may not be painful to somebody else, or it may be more painful or less painful. And so again, those are all individual issues that are based on life experience and exposure to different perspectives. So as we go through this, I know I kind of got off there a little bit philosophically about what this class is about, but that is what this class is about. It's really about all of us learning more about sport and how it's impacted society, to help us gain perspective and hopefully maybe look at people a little differently in a different way, maybe interact with people differently. Who knows? Maybe there's no change, and your perspective is this is just reinforcement of the perspective that you already have. And either way, that's just great, because it's all positive. Okay, so again, just going back to kind of recap and wrap things up for this week. My instructions for this week: you guys have a few links to watch. We're going to write an essay about Margaret Abbott. Again, I would prefer those to just be on a Word document, but I understand some people don't have Word and there's different ways you can send it. I am currently sending everything out through the campus email, through the email you have as a student, and also through Canvas. So everybody should be getting the emails, and I apologize for those of you that get all three of my announcements each week. I will not double those up. It'll be one a week with a lecture video. So as we move into this week, I hope you guys will enjoy reading about Margaret Abbott, and I hope you'll enjoy watching the videos and learning about some just awesome people and their story, which is what we want to know is what's their story. And so you're going to see some great examples, and it might give you some ideas as we start moving through the different decades till we get to present time. A lot of the athletes in these videos are potential athletes and athletes that we're going to study in the class. So hopefully you'll find those interesting. I know you'll be impressed by their accomplishments. Sometimes they're superhuman and just amazing. And if you have any questions about the assignment or past assignments, or you're having trouble keeping up or getting stuff turned in, please reach out to me. I get back very quickly to email. That's the fastest way to get me, and I'll get right back to you. And if I don't, then something's going on. Maybe you have a wrong email address or something. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this week's lesson, and I look forward to hearing all about Margaret Abbott from all of you guys. And those of you that have assignments that you haven't turned in week 1 and 2, get those turned in so that we can get everybody caught up and in a good position to get a good grade. So that being said, it's Wednesday. That means that it's 2 days until Friday, until the weekend. So I hope you have a great day and a great weekend, and I will see you all next Wednesday.